All right, 2-column notes. Here's where we're going to start at the top. Topic, problems of compromise, pages 151 through 154. Okay. If I go to page 151, here's what I see. Constitutional Convention. Good. Historic meeting, controversial plans, the Great Compromise, compromises on slavery. Here are my blue headings. Historic meeting. Controversial plans. The Great Compromise. And compromises on slavery. So for these notes, I can stop. So there you go. I can stop down here. Okay? Cool. You start reading at the top, the Constitutional Convention. Frustrations with the Articles of Confederation have been building for years, not only among farmers, but also among veterans, merchants doing business between states, and creditors of the Continental Congress who had gone unpaid. So we knew that these were some problems that the weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation would cause because we filled out our graphic organizer on the Articles of Confederation. So this is stuff we kind of already know, right? A group of Army officers stationed at Newburgh, New York, even launched a conspiracy in 1783 to overthrow the government. But George Washington declined the offer to lead the revolt. By fall 1786, conditions were so bad that as Shays' Rebellion began, Washington and James Madison were convening a meeting of 5 states in Annapolis, Maryland, to discuss the situation. Washington himself had concerns about the Articles. In August 1786, he expressed these worries in a letter to John Jay, a prominent lawyer and diplomat. I do not conceive we can exist long as a nation without having lodged somewhere a power which will pervade the whole Union in as energetic a manner as the authority of the state governments extends over the several states. So this sounds to me like he's saying state governments have some serious power in the states, so we need a federal government or a national government to have power in the nation. After the Annapolis meeting, Congress called all the states to meet in Philadelphia in May 1787. According to Congress, the purpose of the Philadelphia Convention was to revise the Articles of Confederation. Many states, however, sent delegates who supported a stronger central government. Okay, so the Constitutional Convention. Why did it meet? Ali?
It's the Articles of Confederation.
Good. Constitutional Convention met to revise the Articles of Confederation. Yes, I'm putting that in my CCQ column. No, I don't usually put facts in my CCQ column. However, I want a place to write that. So I'm going to put it there. Okay. Continuing. A historic meeting. Just write down why I convened, Delancey. It'll be all right. The hot summer of 1787 was a turning point in American history. Only a few delegates arrived in Philadelphia on May 14th, the day the convention was scheduled to begin. Traveling to Philadelphia over bad roads from distant states took some delegates several weeks. The meeting did not officially begin until the end of May. Delegates from 12 states attended some or all of the meetings. Politicians in Rhode Island opposed a stronger government, so they never took part. Each state had one vote. Decisions were made by a simple majority. The delegates agreed to keep their discussions secret so that they could speak freely. The official secretary took only incomplete notes, but several other delegates kept personal diaries. The best account of the convention is the detailed diary kept by James Madison. Madison took notes about the delegates, their speeches, and their votes. Because of the enormous role he played in planning and writing the final document, Madison earned the title Father of the Constitution. So real quick, when I take 2-column notes, what are the things that I'm writing down? Main idea. Supporting details. Supporting detail, I've got one pretty good one already. 12 states gathered to fix the government. James Madison became known.
Wait, would that be supporting detail, James Madison?
Yep, as father of the Constitution. Supporting detail 1, 12 states gathered to fix the government. Supporting detail 2, James Madison became known as the father of the Constitution. Okay? I just read 3 paragraphs. I've got 2 supporting details. That's pretty good. It's about right on par. Ryan? 12 states gathered to fix the government. James Madison became known as father of the Constitution.
Do you want me to just copy this one?
Those are my 2 supporting details so far. Okay? So what have I been reading about? I'm going to start thinking about the main idea. What have I been reading about?
States, like, they came together to fix the government.
States coming together to fix the government. So the convention. I'm reading about the convention. Who was there? James Madison was there. 12 states were there. So maybe I'll read a little bit more about the people there. Cool? All right. I'm going to keep going. Don't worry, we'll come back to these notes. The convention delegates, known today as the Framers, also included John Dickinson, Alexander Hamilton, Robert Morris, Charles Cotesworth Pinckney, and Edmund Randolph. Leading the group were George Washington and Benjamin Franklin, the most admired men in America. The convention unanimously chose Washington as its president. His strength and character made him a symbol for people in every state. His leadership would bring the convention respect and legitimacy. The delegates were all men, and they were mostly in their 30s and 40s. The youngest delegate was 26-year-old Jonathan Dayton of New Jersey. The oldest, Benjamin Franklin at 81 was the oldest. 81.
I thought
How
that we
did
died
he
when we
live
were
to
like
be?
70.
He lived a long time.
I don't know, like, wasn't there
I know, don't they
expectancy or
like die
whatever,
like
like
60 or like 70?
Life expectancy was lower back then. Obviously, Ben Franklin had some good genes or something. As a group,
Did he have children?
yes, as a group, the delegates were well educated. Many were trained as lawyers, and about half had attended college. Others were merchants, physicians, and planters. Most had been in their state's legislature or held office. Some had signed the Declaration of Independence. Many served in the Revolution. Most of the delegates were wealthy. There were a few surprising absences from the Constitutional Convention. Several of the most fervent patriots, such as Samuel Adams, opposed creating a stronger national government. Patrick Henry, whose fiery speeches had also helped start the Revolution, also refused to attend the convention. John Adams and Thomas Jefferson did favor the convention's work, but did not attend because they were on diplomatic missions abroad. So, my last supporting detail is going to be about the delegates. Delegates. What do I want to say about them? What were they?
They're all like Middle Agers.
They were all like
Mostly wealthy, influential.
young, mid,
Yep.
mid men, whatever.
Huh? Yep, I will in 1 second, okay? Delegates were mostly wealthy, influential, and because they had most had been in their state's legislature or held office, I'm going to say politicians. Okay, so my main idea, something is missing from my details that I want to incorporate into my main idea. What do you think it's about? What did I read about that you thought was probably important? George Washington. George Washington was the unanimously selected leader. He was supposed to bring this convention legitimacy and respect. My main idea is going to incorporate Washington. So I'm going to say, led by George Washington, the convention delegates met to create a new national government. Yes, it's very condensed in there, and I had to write kind of small, but
So you can't write outside the box?
I mean, I don't like to. You can. That's fine. But I have mild obsessive compulsive disorder, so you can write outside the box if you want.
No, I know.
It means, like, if there are lines, I got to write in the lines. I got to keep things organized. I have my clipboards.
What does that say after met to just add?
Met to create a new national government. The Constitutional Convention met to revise the Articles of Confederation.
Meant to create
A new national government. Okay, how about a CCQ? Give me a CCQ, someone. Something insightful, something thoughtful about this reading, this part of the reading. Dan?
Why most of the delegates were involved in...
Question. If farmers didn't like the articles, why weren't they more involved in the convention? In other words, how come everybody was wealthy and influential? You read about Shays' Rebellion. You know that farmers, they didn't like the articles. What's that? Why weren't they more involved in the convention?
Should we write that down?
Yeah. Oh. I know I'm doing a main idea and supporting details on controversial plans, so I'm just going to write that now. Yes.
Many like called it out because they had like different opinions about it.
I'm just going to, we're going to do one and we're going to go. Good though. You can write that if you want, but I'm not writing it up here because we got to keep moving. Here we go. Controversial plans. Almost as soon as the Constitutional Convention began, it became clear that most delegates were ready to do much more than revise the Articles of Confederation. They were ready to frame an entirely new government. The most historic and difficult issues would involve finding a balance between the large and small states. The convention delegates would also have to find a balance between various northern and southern interests. Of tremendous importance was the emerging battle between those who wanted a strong national government and those who wanted to protect states' rights. What do you think the opposing northern and southern interests would be? Like, especially over slavery. Many of the smaller disagreements would make the convention long and often frustrating. Edmund Randolph of Virginia boldly took the lead. He presented a plan that Madison had devised called the Virginia Plan. This plan proposed an entirely new form of national government. Many parts of Randolph's Virginia Plan were controversial, however. Government would have three separate branches: executive, legislative, and judicial. The legislature would choose an executive to carry out the laws. It would also set up a court system to interpret the laws. Do we know about the Virginia Plan? Yeah. Do we know what its opponent is? The New Jersey Plan.
May I ask you something? Was George Washington the president now, right now?
Nope, there's no president yet. Under the Virginia Plan,
Oh, he's not president?
the national legislature would be bicameral, meaning it would have two houses or groups of representatives. Voters would choose members of the lower house who would then select the upper house. Members of the lower house would be chosen in proportion to each state's population. Proportion meaning
Amount?
proper or equal share. Okay. Today, really quickly, the impact today. This is why sometimes I like these books, because they have like little notes on the side for you. The United States today has a bicameral legislature. The upper house is the Senate, and the lower house is the House of Representatives. All states except Nebraska also have bicameral legislatures.
Why
This is
not
bad news.
Let's not have messed up our video, man. We going him.
I'm just going to assume it's still working. Okay. Here we go. Sporting detail. The Virginia plan proposed a 3-branch government.
Proposed?
Yep. 3-branch government. Executive, legislative, judicial. Okay. Good. That's good for now. Smaller states quickly objected to parts of the Virginia plan. They were afraid of the tyranny of their large neighbors. For example, Virginia, the largest state in terms of population, could have 10 times as many representatives as Delaware, which was the smallest. Delegates argued about Randolph's plan for several weeks. To counter it, William Patterson of New Jersey proposed a small state plan. The New Jersey plan kept many features of the Articles of Confederation, but gave Congress additional powers. The plan proposed a unicameral or one-house legislature. Each state would have equal representation in the legislature. The New Jersey plan also suggested a plural executive. That is, 2 or 3 top executives chosen by Congress. The executive would appoint members of a Supreme Court. These suggestions triggered weeks of debates throughout the hot Philadelphia summer. So here's my next supporting detail. The New Jersey plan proposed a government similar to the Articles of Confederation. And legislature would have one equal representation house.
What was executive?
Pardon?
I thought you said executive that,
The plan proposed a unicameral or one-house legislature.
my bad.
Excuse me, can you submit
Yes, I can.
Oh, that's
Well,
Main idea. Anybody want to try and take a crack at this main idea? What did we read about? What are these plans?
They're
controversial.
about the 3-branch government and how the government should work. So I think the main idea is that some countries, or not countries, states are proposing how the government should work.
Some states are proposing how the government should work. Is it really like a lot about the form of government, like the structure of it,
Yeah.
how many branches, and all right. So something about states proposing different plans for the form of government. Okay. Why are they controversial? What's the problem?
They want equal amount of rights so that every state has a chance instead of like larger states having more chance.
Well, small states wanted a government that would make things equal, or at least balance out the interests with the large states. The large states wanted a government that they could kind of dominate, right? Does that make sense? So, opposing plans by different sized states offered new forms and structures for the government. Just gonna move it like that for a second. Okay? new forms and structures for the government. We're going to go back to all of these, so don't freak out, okay? Give me a CCQ for the controversial plans. Yeah.
Could we just state like the propositions of each plan? Or would that be
Well, you don't want to summarize like facts. Brian, do you have a connection to make here? What's your question?
Why would the smaller states want to keep their plan similar to the article?
Okay. Why did smaller states make a plan similar to articles? I'm just going to make it shorter. Say articles. Anybody have a connection to make? Can you make a connection?
The Virginia plan is similar. It's the government that we're using now, the three-branch government.
Good. The Virginia plan closely resembles our government today.
Which one do you agree?
Which one do I agree with? I mean,
If you were in their time period.
I would probably want some sort of middle ground. So I would probably try to compromise. And in doing so, I might be involved in the Great Compromise. Bum, bum, bum. Compromises at the convention. The Virginia and New Jersey plan set the stage for major disagreements. While most delegates favored parts of the Virginia plan, it was clear that many compromises would have to be made to satisfy smaller states. Compromise. It's compromise.
An agreement to give up something needs to get the bigger goal.
Give up a little to get a little, right? Two sides come to an agreement, and they both sacrifice a little bit. The Great Compromise. After days of argument, it looked as if the convention was at a stalemate. Some large states were hinting that they might withdraw and form their own nation. A separate committee was set up to find a way to balance the interests of large and small states. Finally, the Connecticut delegates, Oliver Ellsworth, Roger Sherman, Dr. William Samuel Johnson, came up with a compromise. It stated the two ideas ought to be combined, and in one branch, the people ought to be represented, and the other, the states. That is, the upper house, or the Senate, would have two representatives from each state. In the other house, representation would be based on states' population. Today, this answer may seem obvious, but it was such a major step for the convention that it is known as the Great Compromise. It was also called the Connecticut Compromise. We've heard of this before, haven't we? Have we read about this? Supporting details for the Great Compromise. There's only a couple here, right? Connecticut delegates proposed a combination of Virginia and New Jersey plans. Other supporting detail? Upper house of legislative branch. Oh, I'm not even writing in there, I'm sorry. Upper house of legislative branch would have equal representation. Lower house would be what?
People.
Based on population. So yeah, people. Okay, and my main idea. Major compromises made at the convention kept bigger problems from happening, such as smaller states or other states just convening by themselves and making their own government. Brian. Zoom in again. How about a CCQ on this one? Some sort of comment, something that you can, are you going to predict anything? Do you have any other thoughts and inference here?
I can predict that after like this major agreement, the country's gonna be like modernized.
Okay. Prediction. Compromises will contribute to major decision making in the future of the USA. Okay.
Can you go back to the other stuff?
Just for a second. Then we have to move on.
What does it say the end of the ending again? From what?
From happening.
Can you go up?
I'm going to move on, okay? And then we're going to go back to this. Don't worry. Okay, compromises on slavery. It's the last section on the notes. As part of the Great Compromise, whoops. As part of the Great Compromise, delegates also had to decide on how to count population. Enslaved African Americans made up a large proportion of the population in several southern states, as much as 30 to 40%. Counting them in full would have given those states much greater representation in Congress. But because some taxes were based on population, it would also increase taxes. Southern states at first wanted to count all slaves for representation purposes, but none for taxation. Wow. Northern states objected. Big surprise. In the 3/5 compromise, delegates agreed that all whites plus 3/5 of the slave population, referred to as all other persons, would be counted for both representation and taxation. Native Americans were not counted. The slavery question brought up other issues. Many people opposed slavery as immoral. Thomas Jefferson, himself a slave owner, had tried to include a protest against it in the Declaration of Independence. Some delegates spoke eloquently about including a ban on slavery in the Constitution. In the hope of maintaining unity between North and South, however, the delegates did not consider including a ban on slavery in the Constitution. As another compromise, they agreed to a clause. What's a clause?
So like a loop, not a loophole, but like.
It's like a rule. I know what you mean by loophole. I know what you're thinking of, but it's a specific thing, a specific rule. Allowing the slave trade to continue for 20 years. Another clause, known as the Fugitive Slave Clause, stated that a slave who fled to another state had to be returned to his or her original state. So, we have a few compromises on slavery. Can I get a main idea before I write my sporting details? Do I know my main idea yet?
I think it's African Americans.
It's more about, I think it's more about relationship between states. Okay?
They actually need them, so they
Because
just have like.
the North banned it from up there, but the South didn't use it because they.
So, northern and southern states had to agree on certain issues regarding slavery, but neither were fully satisfied with the outcomes. Supporting detail 1 will be about the 3/5 compromise. So I'm going to say 3/5. Oh, come on. 3/5 of slave population in South counted as people. What? I'm going to say something about what? Slave trade continues for 20 years. And what else?
If the slave escapes, they have to bring him back into his original state.
Fugitive slaves had to be returned. Okay, those are my compromises. I think we can come up with a few good CCQs on these issues, right?
Could they kill them if they wanted to? If they escaped to another state?
Well, they were their property, so yeah, you can do whatever they wanted with them.
I mean, not the slave, just like other let's say a slave from Virginia escaped to another side of the state, but was trying to go to the north, and someone at the other side of the state catched them. Could they just kill them right away?
Probably.
What happens if the fugitive slaves aren't returned?
Good question. All right, then. One, two, 3 questions. Let's come up with some more comments, because I think you guys probably have some good thoughts about this 3/5 compromise situation, don't you? Ashley?
So only 3/5 of slaves were counted as children.
Yep. What do you think about that? Ali? Treating them like animals, kinda, yeah. Dividing a person up into a fraction is like dividing number of animals up. Okay. How about anything from over on this side of the room? Hebert, you got any thoughts about this? You're all cool with all this stuff? Adela? No thoughts? Anton, what do you think about all this? Harsh. Is this worse treatment than you thought slaves got?
Yeah.
Think about how slaves are treated on the plantation, and then think about how slaves would be treated by the government. Which one is worse?
Plantation to like break.
I mean, like, that's physical harm, but then. when you
Yeah, it's
take
physical
someone-
harm.
But then it's like you don't have like a
There's a
freedom of
difference
right.
between physical and mental harm. Like,
They don't even count you as a whole person.
Yeah, it's like you're 3/5 of that white guy. So,
Yeah.
I mean, the scar on your back is like.
yeah, like, pain is a weakness that leaves your body.
So plantation treatment was physical. Government. Well, I'm gonna say physical abuse. Government treatment is what?
Societal.
Yeah.
Societal.
Social, yeah.
Social abuse.
Social? Is it social abuse? What? There's something else though.
Not social abuse. it's
Citizen
like
abuse, slavery abuse. I don't know.
You know.
inhumane.
inhumane, human rights.
Human rights abuse.
Oh yeah, first.